So lots of my friends were saying to me, oh Viv, write a book about punk days, and I was so bored with the idea. I really didn't want to do that because I felt it was the past and punk is not interested in nostalgia, sentimentality. But when I picked up an electric guitar again when I was 50, and I had all the same responses as when I was a punk, you know, you're a girl, you can't play, you can't sing, you're too old, you know, all those same responses. And I thought that's interesting because that makes a shape, that's a narrative shape. And I think there's a lot for people to be interested in, how I picked up the guitar at 19 and picked it up the guitar at 50, and this big gap in between, which was actually a lot of struggle. And that was an interesting book. So that's what made me start writing. I'm not a very disciplined person, so I didn't look forward to writing the book. So I thought, how can I make this easy for myself? I know every chapter will be the name of a boy I used to date. And I'll chart my whole life by all the boys I've dated. But then I dated so many boys, it would have been too long, the book. So the English title is Clothes, 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 Music, 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 Boys, Boys, Boys. And that's what my mother used to say to me. That's all you're interested in, Viv. You know, I wasn't interested in my lessons, anything but clothes, music, boys. So that was the English title. It's got me started, you know, because in a way I always sort of wanted to be a boy. Not because I wanted a penis, but I wanted to live the life that boys lived. In the 70s, there was a very patriarchal society, very old-fashioned. People think the 70s were cool, they weren't. It was like living in the 50s. And men ruled the country and women were very subservient. And so I wanted to be a boy because I wanted their life. I wanted to play guitar, I wanted to hitchhike around the country without fear of rape. I wanted to travel. So that's why the boys are in the title of the book. That's why I started writing about boys, because every time I dated a boy, I learned something from him. And when I learnt it, I moved on. And that's honestly how I taught myself to kind of think and live like a boy in those days. I don't have to do that now, but yeah. As I wrote, the whole boy thing disappeared. And I got a momentum and I wrote about my life, and as I wrote more and more honestly. And sometimes I'd be bored sitting at my table thinking, oh God, I've got to write more for the book, another chapter. I'll write about that time I tried to give a blowjob and it all went wrong. And I wrote things to make myself laugh, but when I finished the chapter, it was so funny or so honest, I thought it must go in the book. So as I wrote, it built up and built up, and the honesty built up. I didn't mean to be that honest, as I am in the book. I do a lot of talks to young musicians, and I say to them, if you're the kind of musician who is a careerist, who's interested in a career, who's interested in being an entertainer, interested in business, I'm not interested in you. I'm only interested in people who are activists and outsiders and are challenging the status quo. Otherwise, I'm no more interested in speaking to a musician than I am to an accountant or a designer or a politician. Well, when I was 19, music was my teacher, and it was the only thing I had to listen to or talk to that made me feel less of an outsider in life. And it mattered very much what music you listened to, what tribe you were in, what side you were on. But when I was young, there were only really two sides: good, bad, off, on, black, white. You know, it was so simple. Now, a 16-year-old will listen to all music. One day she'll dress like a punk, the next day she'll dress like 1950s. They're shapeshifters. So that's the difference. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but it was very different meanings from my simple society, my simple teenage years. They're much more complicated now. There's so much choice now. That I think a teenager's brain is probably larger now. It has to navigate and surf life. That's the difference. I wouldn't judge it, but it is a big difference. I wrote the book for young women. In my head, I was thinking, how can I speak to young women? How can I let them know everything I've done and all the lessons in my life, because I've made so many mistakes? how can I say that without being like a teacher? And I thought the best way is to illustrate my life, write it, say, you know, I took drugs, I had a consequence, fucked too many guys, I had a consequence, you know, I had no self-esteem, there was consequence. And I just think the book is really a self-help book for young people, but disguised as a memoir. I have a 16-year-old daughter now, and I often wonder, you know, if she said to me, "Mummy, should I be an artist and a musician, or shall I work hard and get a proper job?" I wouldn't know what to say now, because in a way they're both the same thing. I feel like art and music has become entertainment, it's become business. Whereas when I was young, because it was such a small world, you had to be a rebel to do that. You know, you had to live the life and choose to be an outsider. Whereas now, to be a musician, you know, you may be a bit poor, but probably you'll work as hard as an accountant. But when you chose that life when I was young, you chose it because you were an outsider.